Need computer training for a group or office? Contact us today to get a free demo of our training at www.teachucomp.com/enterprise-licensing. To make advanced changes to a selected image, you can use the Format Picture dialog box to control every aspect of your ClipArt in minute detail. You can access the Format Picture dialog box by clicking the Format Shape button in the lower right corner of the Picture Styles group on the Format tab. In order for the Format tab to appear, our picture must be selected. The options that you can change for your selected image are grouped by category within this dialog box. You can see the categories shown in a list at the left side of the box. To use the dialog box, you select a category from the left side and then make any changes to the available settings shown within the category at the right side. Once you have finished making your changes, you can then click the Close button to close the dialog box. Unlike many other dialog boxes, the changes that you make here are applied immediately as they are set, so you may need to use the Reset Picture button to reset the image after experimenting with the settings if you do not like them. This lesson will examine the settings that we can change in each category. First, let's examine the various categories and what can be changed in each. The categories that you can select are Fill, Line Color, Line Style, Shadow, Reflection, Glow and Soft Edges, 3D Format and Rotation, Picture Corrections, Picture Color, Artistic Effects, Crop, Size and Position, Text Box, and Alternative Text. The first thing you should note is that some of the options may not be available for the type of object you have selected. For example, the Artistic Effects option is only available when you have a picture selected, not ClipArt. You can click the Fill category in order to change settings that affect the appearance of the inside fill of some types of ClipArt. For this to be used effectively with images, the selected image must contain a transparent section. If the image is completely filled with its own content, then changing these settings would produce no visible effect. Our example, our picture is full of its own content in the background, so we will not be able to see any fill effects for this particular example. If your selected image does contain a transparent background, then you can use the settings in the Fill section to format the background area within the image. You can select the No Fill option to remove any fill effect from the image. You can select the Solid Fill option to fill the background of the image with the color of your choosing. You can use the Color drop-down to select the desired color to use. You can then use the Transparency slider to set the level of transparency that should be applied to the background fill. You can select the Gradient Fill option to fill the background of the image with a multicolor gradient. A gradient is simply a color that transitions in hue or transparency from one angle to another. You can choose from one of the preset gradients available by making a selection from the Preset Colors drop-down. If you want to make your own custom gradient, then you can use the additional buttons and sliders to customize it. You can use the Type drop-down to select the type of gradient you want to use. Linear, which changes colors from one side to another across a straight line. Radial, which changes colors starting from an origin point and then radiates outwards in a circular pattern. Rectangular, which changes colors starting from an origin point and then radiates outwards in a rectangular pattern. Or Path, which follows the path of the line you draw. Once you have selected a type of gradient, you can then select the specific variation you would like to use in the Direction drop-down. If you selected a linear gradient type, then you can also select the angle at which the gradient changes by entering the desired angle in degrees into the angle spinner box. The Gradient Stop section allows you to set the number and appearance of changing points in the gradient's color scheme. At its most basic level, a gradient must have at least 2 gradient stops. You can also have more if desired. In this section, click on a gradient stop to select the gradient whose properties you wish to set. You can click and drag one of the gradient stops to change its position within the gradient, or you can enter its position as a percentage into the position slider. You can then use the color drop-down to set what color you want the gradient to be at the selected point. You can use the brightness slider and the transparency sliders to set the brightness and transparency of the selected gradient stop. Also notice that when you select a gradient stop, it will be highlighted, and that's how you know which gradient stop you are selecting and making changes to. To add more gradient stops to the gradient, you can simply click into the gradient line at the spot where you wish to place the new gradient stop. You could also click the Add Gradient Stop button to the right of the gradient line to add a new stop as well, and then click and drag to place it at the correct position. If you wish to remove a gradient stop, select the stop and then click the Remove button. At the bottom of this tab, you can check the Rotate with Shape checkbox in order to set the gradient fill to rotate with the image if the image is rotated. Back at the top of the Fill section, you can choose Picture or Texture Fill to fill the background of the selected image with another image of your choosing. Textures are simply preset images that are included in PowerPoint. To apply one of these preset textures, you can select your choice from the texture drop-down. If you wish to use a picture instead, click the File button to insert a picture located on your computer. You can also use the Clipboard button to paste the contents of your clipboard into the background of the image. If you do not have any contents on your clipboard, the Clipboard button will be grayed out. If you want to insert another piece of ClipArt into the background, you can click the ClipArt button to open the Select Picture dialog box. You can then use this dialog box to search for ClipArt to insert into the background. If you want to tile or repeat the background as a texture, you can check the Tile Picture as Texture checkbox. Then, in the Tiling Options section, you can set the Offset X and Offset Y options to set the amount of vertical and horizontal offset to apply to the background image. You can also use the Scale X and Scale Y spinner boxes to set the percentage of the image to display in the tiled background. You can then use the Alignment drop-down to set the alignment of the background image within the main image. You can also use the Mirror Type drop-down to select the type of reflection to apply to the tiled images in the background. If you deselect this checkbox, the Stretch Options section will appear. You can change the background image's offset settings in the Stretch Options section. Use the left, right, top, and bottom spinner boxes to input the percentage by which the image should be offset from the selected side. Finally, you can set the amount of transparency to apply to the image by using the transparency slider. Also, if you want the background to rotate with the image if the main image is rotated, then check the Rotate with Shape checkbox. If you wish to set a pattern fill for the selected image, then choose the Pattern Fill option from the top of the Fill Options section. Then select a desired pattern to use from the choices shown below. You can also use the Foreground Color and Background Color drop-downs to change the colors. If you wish to use the Slide Background as the fill color, then simply select the Slide Background Fill option. The next category is Line Color. As applied to images, these attributes set the color of the picture's border. The three options shown at the right are No Line, Solid Line, or Gradient Line. If you do not want to have a line or wish to remove a line that has been applied, then you can select the No Line option. If you wish to apply a solid line, then select the Solid Line option. Notice that when you do this, other options appear. First, select a color for the line border from the Color drop-down button's palette of color choices. If the colors shown aren't quite what you need, notice that you can select the More Colors command at the bottom of the color palette in order to open the Colors dialog box. In the Colors dialog box, you can create almost any color you desire. This dialog box is available in almost all of the places where you can choose a color in PowerPoint. You can either click the Standard tab and then select one of the colors shown in the honeycomb, or select the Custom tab and select a color you want. Notice at the bottom of both tabs there is a transparency slider to set the level of transparency to apply to the color. Once you have selected your color, click the OK button to return to the Format Picture dialog box. Note that the transparency slider also applies here as well. If you want to apply a gradient line, you can select the gradient line option in order to view a different set of options in the line color area. You can apply a gradient to a border in the same way that you can apply a gradient to a fill, so these options should be familiar to you as we just covered them in the fill section. The next category is the line style category. You can use this category to make changes to any line, or in this case picture border, to change its thickness and appearance. Use the width spinner box to set the width of the line. If you want to have a multi-line border, use the compound type drop-down to select the style of multi-line appearance you want to use. You can use the dash type drop-down to select the style of line that you want to apply. There are several styles of dash lines available. The cap drop-down allows you to change the appearance of the ends of lines. This isn't often used in applying picture borders, however the join type is. The join type drop-down allows you to set the appearance of the junction points where two lines meet. Also note that if you are working with arrows, which PowerPoint considers a type of line, you can set their appearance in the arrows settings section. This would not be the case with picture borders, however, and that is why in our example this section is grayed out and we are unable to use it. You can click the Shadow category at the left side of the dialog box in order to view settings at the right that allow you to apply a shadow to your selected image. You can easily apply one of the pre-created shadow styles by selecting one from the presets drop-down. If you want to customize your shadow's appearance, then you can start by choosing a shadow color in the Shadow drop-down. You can set the transparency of the shadow by using the transparency slider. You can set the size of the shadow by selecting a percentage in the Size slider. You can use the Blur slider to set the amount of blurring applied to the edge of the shadow. You can angle the shadow by entering the desired angle into the Angle text box, or by moving the slider to the desired setting. You can control the amount of vertical offset that is applied to the shadow by using the Distance slider. You can click the Reflection category at the left side of the Format Picture dialog box to view settings to the right that allow you to apply or alter a reflection for your selected image. You can change which reflection is applied by selecting a desired reflection from the Presets drop-down. You can also simply enter your desired values into the Transparency, Size, Distance, and Blur spinner boxes to customize a reflection for your image. You can click the Glow and Soft Edges category at the left side of this box to view the settings to the right that allow you to apply or alter any glowing or soft edges applied to your image. In the Glow section, you can change which glowing effect is applied by selecting a desired glow variation from the Presets drop-down. You can also simply enter your desired values into the Size and Transparency spinner boxes to create a custom glow for your image. In the Soft Edges section, you can set the amount of softening to the image's edges by selecting a desired amount from the Presets drop-down. You can also enter your desired value into the Size spinner box to create custom soft edges for your image. If you want to apply a 3D effect to your selected image, then start by clicking the 3D Format category found at the left side of the Format box. In the Bevel section, you can use the top and bottom drop-down buttons to select a style and thickness of beveling to apply. You can also enter values into the width and height spinner boxes if desired. In the Depth section, you can use the Color drop-down to select a coloring for your beveling depth. You can also set the amount of coloring applied to the beveling by using the Depth spinner box. Likewise, in the Contour section, you can use the Color drop-down to select a color for the contour of the bevel. You can then set the size of the contour by entering the size of the contour into the Size spinner box. In the Surface section, you apply settings that change the appearance of the material and lighting used in the 3D setting. Use the Material drop-down to select the type of material that the 3D effect should emulate. Then use the Lighting drop-down to select an intensity and style of lighting to apply. You can then use the Angle spinner box to set the angle of the lighting if desired. Your image can also be rotated in 3D space by changing the settings that appear in the 3D rotation category. When you select this category, you can easily apply a 3D rotation by selecting one from the presets drop-down. If you wish to apply your own custom rotation, then you can use the buttons and sliders in the rotation section to accomplish that. You can enter a rotation angle for the X, Y, and Z coordinates by using the spinner boxes or by clicking the adjacent buttons. If you selected a perspective style, then you would be able to enter angle into the perspective spinner box. If you were applying a 3D rotation to the text box, you would be able to keep the text appearing flat by checking the Keep Text Flat checkbox. This does not apply to pictures, however, and that is why this section is grayed out. You can also use the Distance from Ground spinner box to set the amount of space that the selected object will appear to be from the ground. You can click the Picture Corrections category to make adjustments to the selected image. Note that for Picture Corrections, Picture Color, and Artistic Effect categories, unless you have an actual picture selected, you may not be able to change many options to the right. These options do not typically appear for most drawn graphics. Otherwise, you will see options at the right side of the Format Picture dialog box that will allow you to perform some of the basic image editing that you can also perform using the buttons available on the Format tab. In the Picture Corrections category, you can alter settings that control the clarity, brightness, and contrast of the selected picture. In the Sharpen and Soften section, you can use the Presets drop-down to select a desired picture clarity. You can also use the adjacent spinner to set the clarity between Soften and Sharpen, or simply enter a percentage into the spinner box. In the Brightness and Contrast section, you can use the Presets drop-down to select a desired brightness and contrast for your selected picture. You can also use the Brightness and Contrast sliders to set the amount of brightness and contrast for the selected image, or once again, enter a percentage into the spinner boxes. If needed, you can click the Reset button to reset your changes to the selected picture if you do not like them. In the Picture Color category, in the Color Saturation section, you can select a preset color saturation from the Presets drop-down, or use the slider and spinner boxes to set the saturation. In the Color Tone section, you can select a preset color tone to apply from the Presets drop-down, or use the spinner box and the slider to set a temperature. In the Recolor section, you can use the Presets drop-down to select a color to apply to the selected image. Once again, if you do not like your changes, you can click the Reset button. If you click the Artistic Effects category, you will see an Artistic Effect drop-down button appear to the right that allows you to select the desired effect. You can click the Reset button to reset any changes if you do not like them. If you hover over each of the effects, you can get an idea of what it will do to your picture. If you click the Crop category at the left side of the Format Picture dialog box, then you can set the amount of cropping to apply to the selected image. You can enter a desired width and height for your image into the width and height spinner boxes. You can also enter a desired offset for the image for either the X or Y axis by entering the amount into either the Offset X or Offset Y text boxes. In the Crop Position section, you can enter the desired amounts by which to crop the image by using the width, height, left, and top spinner boxes to set the desired cropping amounts. If you click the Size category in the Format Picture dialog box, you can enter the height and width into the text boxes provided in the Size and Rotate section to the right. Notice that if you want to adjust the relational aspect, height to width ratio of the selected image, you would need to ensure that the Locked Aspect Ratio checkbox is deselected in the Scale section first. Then you can enter the height and width independently if desired. In addition, you can enter a degree of rotation to apply to the image by using the rotation spinner buttons. In the Scale section, you can enter a percentage into the height and/or width text boxes. The image will then be scaled by the selected percentage. You can also check or uncheck the 3 available check boxes in this section as needed. They allow you to lock the aspect ratio, to determine if the ratio used is based on the current image scale or on the scale of the original image, and to scale the image as would be best for slideshow when presented in a selected resolution. You can also click the Reset button at the bottom of this tab to reset any change made to the size of the image. You can click the Position category at the left side of the dialog box to display positioning options to the right. In the Position on Slide section, you can enter a measurement into both the horizontal and vertical text boxes and then use the Adjacent From dropdown to select the anchor point from which the measurements should be interpreted. You can select either top left corner or center of the slide from these drop-down buttons. If you click the text box category, you will see options at the right that you can use to make changes to selected text boxes. Since these options only apply to text-containing shapes like word art and text boxes, you can review these settings in Lesson 4.7, Setting Text Box Options. You can click the Alternative Text category to set a title and description of the image for persons who use a screen reader to view image content. You can enter a title for the image into the title text box, and then enter a description of the image into the description text box. This information should certainly be entered for the selected image if you plan on publishing the presentation to the Internet. Once you have finished applying your desired settings to the selected image, click the Close button in the lower right corner of the Format Picture dialog box to close the dialog box and apply your changes. Like what you see? Get a free demo of our training for groups of 5 or more at www.teachucomp.com/enterprise-licensing.